BNN.
Do 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 do.
BNN.
Do 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 do.
BNN.
Do 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 do. Hello and welcome back to Big Nostalgia, the podcast where we take the games from our past and we analyse them. How were they developed? Do they hold up today? What do we think of them then? And what do we think of them now? I am Hadowink.
And I am Vixter.
And to bring us back with a good old swing of the sword.
Through the time, warping, expertise.
This metaphor may have got lost in translation. Anyway, to come back in a big way, we're going to be looking at The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time.
Ocarina of Time. Yeah.
So hopefully everyone listening to this, listened to our Super Smash Bros. Episode. That was looking at a series of games. And obviously now Ultimate is out, so that's not even the whole series. But we're just going to be looking at 9 more N64 games over the next 9 weeks. And we thought we'd start with a big one. So without further ado, let's get down and play that Ocarina.
So, anyone who's anyone, especially if you owned a Nintendo 64, knows that Ocarina of Time game from the Zelda franchise. I mean, it sold 2 million copies during the first 39 days of coming out. It came out officially, it was shown at Space World in 1995, and it was originally known as Zelda 64, as Nintendo had already been producing Mario 64 concept to they were thinking of similar sort of pathways to go down. Makers got more focused on the Mario 64 as a launch title for the Nintendo 64, but there was definitely a lot of ideas that they wanted to put into Zelda, which I'm very grateful that they ended up not doing, because the way that it is now is so much better, such as they were hoping to make Ganondorf's castle, the hub worlds, a bit like Peach's castle in Mario 64, but that was more due to the size of the Nintendo 64's hard drive, which I personally think would have spoiled a lot of the free roaming that you get from such an iconic game.
Yeah, well, and also it all came because Zelda Ocarina of Time was built off a heavily modified version of Super Mario 64's engine. So that was possibly a leftover. Well, actually, a leftover from that concept is the boss battle in the Forest Temple, where Phantom Ganon hops in and out of paintings.
To go back to whole Nintendo's Mario 64, which of course his hub world, he popped in and out of paintings to get to the worlds beyond.
I can't imagine a Zelda game with a hub world.
Well, there has been one.
I was going to say Triforce Heroes.
Triforce Heroes has a hub world. Although, technically, I'm not sure you Zelda fans agree with me or not, but that is a very debatable Zelda game, as it doesn't go down many of the traditional Zelda pathways.
Yeah, Nintendo had a little thing a few years ago of making their online co-op games for the 3DS, a system that's not really built for it. But they made that Metroid one, they made the Zelda one.
The princess wasn't even Zelda. I mean, come on, guys.
Was it Zoldo?
No. I think it was like, I can't remember now. Please comment below if you know the name of the stupid princess from that Zelda game that wasn't really a Zelda game. Now, Zelda fan base was already pretty big, but the thing about the Ocarina of Time that it brought a lot of new concepts to the type of game Zelda was. For example, the 3D effect. They weren't able to do that in a lot of hard drives before the Nintendo 64, but it really did push the size of the Nintendo 64's hard drive to be able to produce such a game, which is why they were considering such a thing as hub worlds. They really wanted the third-person perspective because they really wanted to see the difference between Big and Little Link. If you had a first-person perspective, going through the whole time aspect would have been a lot less substantial.
I think they played with the first person aspect, but I can't even imagine playing a Zelda game in first person. Like, you play games like Skyrim like that.
But it's all about, like, Link is supposed to be the quote-unquote everyman. The whole idea of putting your name on him, the fact that he's such a kind of, like...
blank canvas?
Yeah, you can really feel as the hero, because he's a new hero. It's all his, like, beginning to find himself kind of process, which I think Shigeru
Miyamoto
really wanted to put across, which is why he gave the name Link to such an iconic character, because he was always supposed to be the link between the people in the game. Miyamoto also liked the idea of not being a third person, because his words about he thinks that Link looks cool, basically.
Yeah, to be honest,
He really likes the look of Link and really wanted to show that off.
if you spent time designing a character, you want the people to be able to see it.
Now, there was a guy on his team called... Philip's going to read this.
Yoshiaki Koizumi.
Who actually came up with the concept of the Z targeting, which is another new concept brought out on the Zelda Ocarina of Time. Which, imagine playing that game without Z targeting as well.
That's possibly the biggest innovation that game brings, and that's saying
because a lot of Nintendo games later than that bring that concept into their games. I mean, Ocarina of Time was such an iconic game for setting the standard for free roaming 3D platforms, because there was very little beforehand. You may comment in the below if you disagree, but you're wrong.
Set the standard for 3D adventure games.
Well, that's why it was it was the number one game of the Nintendo 64 for like 10 years.
Yeah, well, it gets voted highly in the top games of all time every time it... But anyway, we'll talk about that in Legacy, which is later on.
Another concept that the Ocarina of Time brought to the whole gameplay is the concept of Hyrule Field. I mean, it was a very big engine. It was a very small engine to make such a big concept. Even something such as simple as the sun rising and the moon rising and falling. That was a whole... They wanted to make it realistic. They added fog. They started really thinking about the look of the game rather than just focusing on the character.
Because back then, day-night cycles were a big, something that didn't happen much.
No, and the fact that you can go onto Hyrule Field and you can even watch the sun go across and then see the moon come up again. At that time, it was a big deal. But its official release date was November 1998 in the US.
Yeah, so it is just over 20 years old now.
And 7.6 million, excluding ports and re-releases, of the game has been made and sold. But let's go on to the storyline. If you are a Zelda fan, you know that this hero named Link is always asleep.
Yeah.
Is always asleep. And he gets a call from the Great Deku Tree saying that he has got this evil inside him and he needs Link to hurry and help save him.
Then Link on the phone is like, new phone, who dis?
No, that's through his helpful sidekick, Navi. Now, I think Navi's fan base is split 50-50, because you either find her a lovable companion or annoying so-and-so.
Annoying light bulb.
With wings.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, of course, Link goes to save the Deku Tree, which in turn then means that you need to go and contact, go and meet Princess Zelda to help save Hyrule.
Yes. It all starts with him going to try and save the Great Deku Tree, and then the Great Deku Tree's like, alright, you have to go see Princess Zelda, take this emerald. And he's like, cool. I'm going to put this in my pocket.
That's safe.
And then Zelda's like, oh, I had a vision that you would come, and you're like, cool. And then it's a world-spanning adventure to try and find a ruby and a sapphire.
After you've done that, you go back to the castle, but wait! The evil Lord Ganondorf has got there before you. And you end up turning into adult Link. Which, it's like the best story twist over ever in a game that early on. I bet you every person who plays it through the first time is like, what?
Yeah.
As long as they haven't had spoilers. I mean, it's been 20 years now. There are spoilers out there.
So when Link pulls out the Master Sword deems him not ready to wield it yet, so keeps him asleep for 7 years. Then he wakes up, and Rauru, the Sage of Light, is waiting to explain that stuff's gotten bad in the last 7 years.
And Princess Zelda is gone, and everything's all sad and destroyed, basically end of the world sort of situation, and he has to go and save it all, basically, because he is a hero of time.
Yeah, so it's quite a iconic thing when you first change, because obviously Hyrule Castle Town is probably the most affected by the 7 years. You walk out and it's like, oh, there's a bunch of zombies.
But even like when you go to the Zora's domain, like there's certain domains over the course of the Hyrule universe. There is Death Mountain that has the Gorons. There's Zora's domain, which of course has the Zoras, and then Hyrule Castle and
Kakariko Village,
which is mainly human based.
and
Well,
Lon Lon Ranch,
humanoid, quote unquote,
and
based.
Gerudo Valley, I guess.
And Gerudo Valley, but that's
You can't really access that as a kid anyway.
no, and it's mainly just chicks anyway, all born together, just chicks until the
Just
one
chicks.
man. Yeah, that's what it is.
I mean, it is, but you're like, just a
chicks.
bunch of chicks.
Just a bunch of chicks. But yeah, the whole Zora's domain being frozen over. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a pretty big deal from seeing it as a kid to being an adult.
Well, that's the thing. You go back to the places you've seen as a child, and they're different. Like Kokiri Forest, where you start, is overrun by monsters.
But I did like the way that they managed to sneak temples into areas that you didn't even think were temples, such as the Shadow Temple being in Impa's village, Kokiri Village,
Yeah, well, being at the back of the graveyard, essentially.
and down the well.
Yeah, and also, well, yeah, it's areas that you'd visited as a child for the most part.
But you never really thought, oh, down the well, that's going to be a plot point.
Well, that's the thing, is like, that's the whole paradox, isn't it? Because you go there as an adult, and he's still pissed off after 7 years about the kid who played that damn song. You're like, just have interest. What's the damn song? And then you go back in time and play the damn song.
I did like the concept they brought to the table as well, because they could have easily kept Little Link, certain things can be done, Big Link, certain things can be done, but like kept it quite separate. But the interlinking, even certain things that you can do as a Little Link and can't do as an adult Link, and vice versa, you have to jump through time to be able to complete certain aspects.
Especially in the latter half of the adult Link stuff.
Yeah,
'Cause
such
it's
as
the-
the Sand Temple and stuff.
Yeah, so you have to do it for the bottom of the well, which you need to do for the Shadow Temple. And you
Spoilers.
have to do the first half of the Spirit Temple as Child Link. Because you go and you're like, I can't fit through that hole. I wonder who can. Me!
But and the characters, I mean, the characters that they made for the Zelda franchise,
So there's the introduction of human Ganon.
there hadn't really been much of a quote unquote supporting cast really in Zelda games
I was
before
going to say,
this.
there'd been Impa. Well, in the first game,
Impa, Zelda, and Link. That's all. And Ganon as a monster pig.
Old Man in Cave.
Oh, don't go. No wait.
I was going to say in Zelda...
It's dangerous to go along. Take this.
Link to the Past had NPCs and like Kakariko Village and introduced a lot of stuff. But this was the first introduction. Well, they allude to it in A Link to the Past, but this is the first introduction of human Ganon as Ganondorf. This is also the first one with Sheik, and actually the only one with Sheik.
Yeah, Sheik's it. So far, Sheik has only been present in Ocarina of Time and Super Smash Brothers.
Yeah, and Impa, would have been introduced in an earlier game.
But Impa has been portrayed as an old woman and a young woman. This one, she's only been the young woman, hasn't she?
Yeah.
Youngish woman, middle-aged, you know.
Well, you don't see her as an adult, do you?
No, because she
just
becomes...
she escapes with Zelda, and that's...
No, but she's become
she
the
becomes
spirit.
she's the sage, isn't
The
she?
sage, yeah. So technically she dies, but spoilers. Oh well. But yeah, I feel that it was the first one that you really got to know the supporting cast as well as the main cast, and the first one where Zelda was not just a pretty princess in a tower. She actually, spoiler alert, is Sheik, so she actually has an input.
And
in
like
the
at the
storyline.
time, that was a massive twist. at the end.
Yeah, no one saw that coming.
Yeah.
But then, of course, they did it for Wind Waker a little bit.
Yeah, although that happens more at the halfway point of the game than that right at the end.
Yeah. But it was a new concept for the Zelda franchise, which is always good.
Yeah. The one thing that is possibly the most iconic from it is the soundtrack.
Well, the soundtrack was actually composed by...
Koji Kondo, who's done a lot of the Mario series, and he did a lot of the original Zelda series.
But he said one of the most difficult things was doing the no more than 5-note format, because of course from the Ocarina's power to send people through time, to do certain songs, to influence Zelda, to influence Eponia, to get to temples.
Yeah, because
he had a very small soundtrack to really work with, and what he manages to get out of that is fantastic, really. If you think it's just 5 notes, it's
the 4 C buttons and A, and that's it.
And that's it. That's crazy.
Yeah, but it's the first time you get things like the Gerudo Valley tune, which is probably one of the best.
You like that one, don't you?
It is a great one.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's not, but I gotta like the forest. Do 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 do. No, that's a Lost Forest, isn't it?
Lost Woods.
Lost Woods. Gotta love the Lost Woods. It's just, for a Zelda fan, you hear that music and you know it instantly which game it is, and where it is.
Yeah, and there was I think it's a new remix for Smash Ultimate. It might have been in one of the earlier ones, but there is one that is the Lost Woods combined with like the battle theme from Ocarina of Time, and that's a great remix. Just because it's so it's like so upbeat. And then visually, I mean, it's aged like an N64 game.
Yeah, but that's always going to be a product of its time. I mean, technology in what did we say, 20 years?
Yeah.
Technology in 20 years has developed so much. I mean, if you think just outside of gaming for a bit, with like mobile phones and internet and technology, when that came out, internet was still doing the
God,
which used to drive us insane, because it used to take like half an hour to go on the internet. And now everything's so instant.
We're talking about dial-up, if you didn't get it
from... yeah, dial-up. But still, any game is going to age, but I think it's aged better than most, because it's still an enjoyable game to play, and of course they have done they have redone it for the the 3DS, which was nicely done. Even with a new version, once you've defeated Ganon, isn't it? You can do the hero version.
Well, that's Master Quest. Master Quest was originally... Well, originally Miyamoto wanted to do Master Quest as like an expansion to Ocarina of Time, but it was Eiji Aonuma, who's been the director of the Zelda series since Majora's Mask, who said, no, I don't want to do that. And he's like, fine, you got 18 months to make a new Zelda game. And that's why he made Majora's Mask. But they still made Master Quest, and it was released on the GameCube as part of a Zelda Collector's Edition.
I'm sure we will have a video at some point about Majora's Mask, but let's just say how much we enjoyed that as a second in the Nintendo 64 Zelda franchise.
And also, like, it would have been a bit anticlimactic to release another whole cartridge, which was just Ocarina of Time again with remixed dungeons.
Yeah, it would have been a bit of
as much as Master Quest is quite fun.
It was good waiting for that edition to do it rather than doing it straight away.
Yeah, I'd say the best way you can do it is in Ocarina of Time 3D, which actually mirrors the whole game as well, doesn't it?
Well, one of the really good things I think as well that they've done is that encyclopedia. Hyrule Historia. Because if you look at that, then Ocarina is a very iconic point in the whole like franchise of Zelda, because in that they have a made timeline, with that being the turning point for a lot of the other storylines.
Because of the time travel screwery. Because you've got 3 ways it goes, which is the hero wins and it continues from the timeline of young Link. He goes back and that timeline continues. He goes back, basically tells Zelda everything that happens. They go arrest Ganon, and then everyone just goes, okay, well that's sorted then.
Yay!
There is the adult Link timeline, where the hero has defeated the Demon King Ganondorf, and then disappears, because he goes back to his own timeline. And everyone's like, oh, okay, well, guess we rebuild. And then there is the timeline where the hero loses
Boo!
and evil reigns, which they basically created so they could put in all the games that didn't really fit in the first two.
But it is a nice, if you haven't checked it out, definitely do. It's a very nice way that they've tied all the different storylines and tried to, because of course the concept of the hero of time or the hero in the green tunic has been a constant throughout all the Zelda games for obvious reasons, and it's a nice way that they've linked them all together.
Yeah. I was going to say there's interesting stuff. Like, have you ever watched a Zelda speedrun?
No, I've never actually watched one, but I know that the fastest playthrough of Ocarina of Time was 18 minutes 10 seconds by Cosmo Wright, because he used the major glitch, which I'm sure you can explain.
Well, there's the biggest one is the fact that you can do a certain technique in the Goma boss room warps you to the top of Ganon's tower at the end of the game, and that's how they cut out most of the game. But it's stuff like if they were doing a actual 100% speedrun set, you had to go around collecting things. It's stuff like if you pause at a certain point as a bomb explodes, you can like give yourself that momentum and you just go flying across Hyrule Field. And like walking backwards is actually quicker than running forward and rolling.
Wow.
So it's just those little things that apparently like shave off little bits of time. And actually one of the most interesting things recently I've been watching is Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time randomizers.
Yeah.
Which is where it randomizes what's in every chest in the game, which makes it really strange to watch, because you can set it so that all the doors and stuff are open, so you can be Adult Link from the start. Then as a result, you've got all these like weird nooks and crannies where usually you'd find like rupees or a heart piece, which have like key items, and you'll be like in the middle of the Great Deku Tree and be like, "Oh, I found the Megaton hammer." I guess.
As you do.
And I think it's stuff like that that keeps this game alive and still in the public consciousness. Well, like I say, 20 years later and it still is a popular game.
Well, definitely from any Zelda fanboy or fangirl perspective. I mean, it's one of those iconics in the entire series. But as you said, as a general game, everyone knows it.
Yeah.
I personally feel I am a Zelda fan, but I do feel it's one of those games that everyone knows or has heard of, just because of all the iconic things that it did when it first came out, and the way that it's been brought back either in the remake, in the 3DS version, or as you said, in the randomizers, and still making it relevant today.
Yeah, it's a game that is still very well remembered. It will keep on getting re-released as long as it keeps printing money for Nintendo.
Yeah.
And you see all these people making these really, really high definition versions of it in like Unreal Engine. I don't think Nintendo will ever do anything like that. They look nice, but like I think the gameplay is far more important. I actually quite like the way that the 3DS looks, the 3DS version, and having the portable version was more important anyway than just having, well, especially not a Wii U version. That would have been a bit of a waste. As much as I did enjoy Wind Waker HD, but that was just Wind Waker with a new lighting engine and cleaned up graphics.
Yeah, the thing is, with these remastered versions, the main thing they're doing is literally just tidying up and doing stuff with technology that they weren't able to do with before. The core storyline is still there, the core mechanics are still there, they've just made it better because they've got the technology to do it now. So, but I do feel that this is a game that made the character Zelda, the character Link, become as iconic as Mario in the Nintendo franchise.
Yeah, because it gave him the look that he pretty much still has today. With, yeah.
Apart from maybe Breath of the Wild, but still, he still has a general look.
Yeah, due to the funny colour palette of the SNES, he had technically pink hair.
Yeah, but of course, the green tunic was inspired by Peter Pan, because of this this concept that the creator had of a boy with a with a fairy, from this game perspective, coming from a different world and being the hero, and he was always inspired by the Peter Pan sort of story-esque.
And that's the thing, he comes from a village where they are perpetually kids.
Yeah, which would be the Kokiri.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of inspirations taken to it, and I mean, we could go into the amount it's inspired, even if you don't count the other Zelda games, which all, in some way or another, take something from Ocarina of Time. It's inspired so many games and so many different things and so many different games.
So personally, for me, this is one of the Nintendo 64's top games of all time, basically.
Yeah.
Just the way that it changed the dynamics of gameplay, that it was so ahead of its time, the way that it pushed some of the boundaries and really gave a very engaging full view world before that concept was even really a thing. Before that, the Nintendo games I remember were more 2D platforms.
Yeah. That's the thing. You had, like, if you put it side by side with Mario 64, it's definitely aged better than that.
Yeah, Mario 64 I think was restricted by they haven't.
Well, it's a launch title. Launch titles never get the full oomph out of a new hardware.
But they were restricted by the Peach Hubland as well. I mean, Zelda was nothing like Ocarina of Time has been made before, but it used a production team from Super Mario and Star Fox, so it was able to get the best of everything, the best of everyone on it. But it has been the biggest game ever released on the Nintendo console in terms of megabytes because of the way it was made. And I think the fact that they didn't compromise on that, the fact that they stuck by that, is the best. That's what's made it iconic.
I don't think they've made a game that, like, compared to the time of its release, so vast until Breath of the Wild.
Now, Breath of the Wild, I think, is an amazing game. I haven't actually played it fully, like my co-producer here, but I have played the odd bits and pieces. The only problem I have, if you're comparing them in that sort of sense, is Breath of the Wild is the first Zelda to be an open world concept. It's not the first game to be an open world concept.
Yeah, so
whereas Zelda Ocarina of Time was one of the first games to be a 3D kind of.
If you're talking about impact on gaming as a whole.
Yeah, but Breath of the Wild is amazing.
Yeah, what I mean is Ocarina of Time wrote the rulebook for up until Breath of the Wild, where it's the first time they've properly rewritten it again. Yeah. And we'll have to see what they do in the future, I guess.
So as you can tell, we're both major fans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with that brings us to the end of the second episode of Big Nostalgia. If you agreed with us, let us know in the comments. If you disagreed, let us know why in the comments.
And we'll tell you why you're wrong. I've been Vixter.
I've been Hadowink. If you want to follow us for updates, it's at AbridgedBK on Twitter. This is the first of a full series, so over the next 10 weeks, over the next 9 weeks, I think, we'll have different games, all from the N64 for this run. Next week, we're going to be changing it to something a bit more obscure, as we talk about Snowboard Kids.
Snowboard Kids!
And that, I'm sure, will be a very good episode as well. But anyway, thank you very much for listening. Let us know what you thought, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye! Bien.
Do 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 do.
Bien.
Do 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 do.
Bien.
Do 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 do.
Big nostalgia.
Yeah.